the Chicago Communicator News Media Talk Show. And tonight we're going to be talking to our Illinois State Rep, Sonya Harper. Yes. And we're waiting for her to come aboard, and she's going to talk to us about, I think she's the chairman of the Black Caucus.
And that's what other committee she's on.
And we'll ask her about her committees and so forth. So let me welcome all of you to the show. We have Miss Elizabeth Johnson. Elizabeth, tell people who you are. Give us a 1-minute intro.
Hi, my name is Elizabeth Johnson. I have been hanging out with Wanda for I don't know how many years, and I'm just happy to be here. And that's it.
That's it. All right. Mr. Anthony Travis, tell us who you are, sir.
I'm known as the tax doctor. Excuse me. I have my own show called Your House Is on Fire every Wednesday from 11 to 12 on Truth High Definition Radio, where we have spent a lot of time talking about taxes and having our own Boston Tea Party.
All right. And then we have our co-host, Miss Thomas A. Yarrington. Thomas A., tell everybody a little bit about you.
My name is Thomas A. Yarrington, resident for years of Chicago West Side and moved to Springfield, where I work for the General Assembly, which I love.
All right. Well, hey, look, we have been inviting our representatives, our state reps, our senators, and our congressmen on, and we're going to continue to do that because we're going to use this forum as a place where people can come and tell us about what they're supposed to be doing for us. And then we can ask them questions, and that's how we're going to address Miss Harper when she comes on tonight. We want to know some of the things that she's doing since she's been in office. And as I said, I think she's the chairman of the Black Caucus, the Illinois Black Caucus now. So have you heard anything, any of you, about any of the work that she's done?
Well, she was the champion of the cannabis legislation. She was pushing that. Reuben Feldos, myself, Hollywood, Ricky Hendon, we always at the table in the beginning of putting that legislation together. And we all took buses down to Springfield to lobby them. Yeah. And boy, how did black folks get screwed?
See there?
Yes. But wait a minute. When y'all came down to Springfield, Anthony, yes. did you hang out with the Senator Hendon afterwards?
Yeah.
Okay, so I got a chance to see you then. That means I met you at some point somewhere.
And then we all went to that bar to eat and stuff and wear our green shirts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we take good care of you when you come to Springfield. So I want to say to everybody, and especially you, TJ, I would love for you to come down and be a guest of mine, especially in the chambers and anywhere else. As soon as this COVID gets a little bit better, I will certainly make sure. TJ, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, I personally want to invite you down and let you see how they work. You can see Representative LaShawn Ford, and you can see Senator Sims. We'll get you a pass and let you see what it's like to work in the legislature for a couple of days.
Thank you.
At least for a day or so,
Thank you. I'm excited to do that.
I would love for you to. But speaking of which, Anthony, I know we were talking about you were saying how Black people didn't get their fair shake. You're absolutely correct. And again, that's why we continue to push the information of we have to work collectively. Yes, if we don't stay on top of that, they're gonna push it up under the rug just like they do everything else. So I agree.
And what happened to the czar, the Black woman who gave up her senatorial seat?
Listen, I only work there. I have no opinion on that.
I mean,
I just know that
we just lost out.
But she, in one instance, and in prayer, the Lord makes things, So whatever happens, it ain't your fault. sometimes we have to suck it up
and
move on. For whatever reason she left. And we talk, as people, you talk about things afterwards. But again, we have no control. We don't know if they offered her more money somewhere or what was going on. Like, so we never know. Just like Senator Hendon, one day we worked we were working on the campaign. The next thing you know, he retired. And everybody got mad at me. And I'm like, hey, he didn't tell me.
Yeah.
I didn't know. But so to find out, he had health issues. The doctor told him if he did not quit, he would die.
Wow.
Now, he is a personal friend of mine. So Ricky never let up. He worked tirelessly for the people. And a lot of times you can work for the good of people and people don't work good for you.
Yeah, that's true.
And so your health becomes the main component. I don't care how strong or what you're doing. If you ain't checking on your health, you playing a dangerous game.
Well, we call it Russian roulette with your life.
Yes. And so he did the right thing now, let me say, Springfield has missed him over and abundantly, from his
theatrics.
Not just his theatrics. Well, he was always funny, but his stance on doing right, his stance on holding people accountable, his stance on calling folk out, his stance on getting people riled up to participate. So that's missing. It's missing in the state. We don't have anybody.
No, we don't.
And then when you're the only person pulling, that weight get real heavy.
Yeah. I mean, that's why when you think about the Black Caucus and you think about Representative LaShawn Ford, there's a dichotomy there with them.
Yes, okay. Go ahead.
So
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I didn't finish hearing what you said, Anthony.
I said when it comes to the Black Caucus and Representative Ford, there is a breakage there. There's a disconnect.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
So let me say this. How do we, and I agree with you what you're saying, and how do we as the general people, because we want to educate and we want to motivate, how do we get them back into the fold?
Well, first of all, they have to understand we don't work for them. They work for us. Okay. That's a major crisis.
Okay,
some of them think they movie stars. And you're not. Your job is to go to Springfield, take care of the people business. And we don't have that.
So ladies and TJ, how do we get them, or what are the things we can do to make them feel, how do we make yourself and us begin to talk favorable? What are the things that we can do so that they're seen in a more favorable light? Because politicians are not seen in a favorable light. What are the things we can do to help them, opposed to looking bad all the time? Begin to make them look good, where us making them look good helps them do more for our community.
Well, I would say first, we have to make sure that these politicians are politicians that we can make look good. If these politicians have good intentions, then it's very easy for us to put those good intentions out. But if you have bad intentions from the get, it's very hard for us to advocate for you. And bad intentions such as benefiting yourself or putting yourself before your constituents, or making sure that, or trying to, benefit your community before any other community. Because even though you serve a certain community, you do serve the people at large as well, because your legislation will affect people outside of your community. If you have intentions that are better than that, you want to reduce taxes, but also make sure that we can maintain a level of spending that will benefit all people, then it will be very easy for us to promote you, or to make sure that people see you as you are. But if you're not that type of person, it's very hard to do so. So the politicians have to be right in order for the way they're seen to be right in accordance to how their personality is.
So, you know, the IBI, IPO used to do that, and they would list the strong points of each legislator. And this was back where it started some years ago. I'm not sure how active they are at this time, but there used to be different kind of political agents, organizations that would list the criteria of what they were doing. You know, they doing this, they doing that. So outside of us judging them, and not to sound, I don't want to sound like we're being negative. I want to look at some positive things that we can do. You know what I'm saying? Is it invite them to things more? Is it to go to their events more? Is it to call them more? I mean, let's look at some things like that so we can say what they've done ourselves. You know what I'm saying? Well, we can benchmark them.
How are you, State Rep?
Hi, Miss Wanda. Hi, Miss Wanda. How are you?
I'm doing fine. How you doing?
I'm doing okay. I can't complain.
Oh, great. I'm so glad to have you. We have Mr. Anthony Travis.
Hey, Sonya.
Hey, Sonya. We have Miss Thomas A. Yarrington. We have Miss Elizabeth Johnson. We have Mr. J. and Miss Jillian. Everybody say hey.
Hey. Oh, hello. Hey.
Right. So we're glad to have you. So now, come on, guys. Let's get her involved and let's talk to her about what she's doing. I know. Tell us about the Black Caucus and what you're doing there.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much, Miss Wanda. And thank you so much, everyone. It's wonderful to be on. I don't know if you guys know, but Black Caucus is on fire right now. And I'm talking about the Illinois Legislative Black Caucus. I've just had the distinct opportunity to take over as the joint chair of the Illinois Legislative Black Caucus, which means I'm over both the House and the Senate Black caucuses. And as you guys
congratulations.
Know,
Congratulations.
Yes.
Yeah, I believe the youngest person ever to chair both of the Black caucuses. But as you guys know, under the leadership of our former joint chair, Kim Lightford, we underwent a bold agenda to attack systemic racism in the state of Illinois.
Yeah.
And it consisted of our 4-pillar agenda that we were able to get 3 of those 4 pillars passed during lame duck session. And I just want to commend my Black Caucus members for standing up to the charge, for listening to the community, for listening to the protests, and for finally organizing themselves in such a manner as to bring forth not just 1, not just 2, not just 3, but dozens, almost 100 bills at one time dedicated to improving the quality of life for Black people in this state.
Come on now.
Thank you. Yeah, so those 4 pillars were, just very quickly, criminal justice reform, police accountability, and violence reduction, which I don't know if you guys are paying attention to the news, where that pillar was just signed into law on Monday by Governor Pritzker. So it is now law. And we are looking forward to later in March signing our education and workforce development pillar, which went through preschool, through elementary, through higher education as it related to our communities, as well as our economic access, opportunity, and equity committee, which touched all facets of anything that has to do with the economic mobility of Black people in the state of Illinois. I mean, we touched on areas like procurement and getting state contracts. We touched on areas like pay equity and making sure that Black men and Black women are getting fair wages paid to them on the jobs. We talked about industry-specific equity as it relates to making sure that there's equity in the entire agriculture industry and our food access, as well as the new cannabis industry in the state of Illinois. We're also looking at environmental justice and ways that we can economically benefit from protecting our natural resources and protecting our air and our water and our land, and so many other issues that come up under their payday loans. We literally attacked the payday loan industry by capping the interest rates on payday loans at 36%. This is something that has not been done anywhere else in the country. And I just want to let you guys know that the Black Caucus is working hard for you. And just to wrap it up, our healthcare and human services pillar, while we did not get that over the finish line during the lame duck session, that's the first thing to go as soon as we head back to Springfield in March. And we're looking forward to passing that one as well, that deals with everything from our healthcare disparities in our Black communities, the reason why some of us are dying 30 years sooner than other people in communities just because we live in Black communities. Those things are just wrong. And the attack that's happening on a lot of our safety net hospitals in our communities are some of those things that you can see us addressing in that upcoming legislation. So really just wanted to give people a background on the things that we just did. And
girl, you
are
moving.
very important and they're historic. And I just want to let you know, this has never been done before.
Never.
But we have to keep our eyes on implementation, right? Because we know in our community we can get the bill passed, but we need to make sure that we stay on everyone to get it implemented. And so where we are right now,
implementation is the key.
Right. We're going to be having a town hall meeting on tomorrow evening at 6 p.m., a statewide virtual Zoom town hall meeting where we will go into depth to explain to everyone about those pillars that we just passed. But more importantly, we want to get feedback from our constituents, from our residents, from our businesses, from our organizations on what would they like to see in our upcoming agenda? Because now that we started this momentum, we're not going to stop. The Black Caucus is going to have a Black agenda that's going to get passed every single year. So it's time for 2021. I'm kicking it to y'all. What should be in that agenda and help us get the word out that we want to hear from our constituents, our residents, not only knowing that what we've done, but help us to continue to push and fight for our communities here in the state of Illinois.
Sonya, I want to congratulate you on that new position of being over both the House and the Senate. But there are some questions that needs to be answered. Dealing with the justice bill that the governor did sign into law. Can you address this issue of somebody trespassing on your property and nothing could be done about it?
So you're talking about the issue of trespass. I need to know a little bit more. What would you like clarification on that particular law? So we do currently have trespassing.
I was listening to some of the outcry of that legislation that if somebody trespassed on your property, they're saying it wouldn't do you no good to call the police. I mean, that just don't sound logical.
Yeah, that does not sound right. I would not agree with whatever interpretation of that was. Yeah. However, again, please, tomorrow night, I'm going to have my expert, the people who have spent literally 6 months writing and drafting all the components to this bill. Representative Justin Slaughter, Senator L.G. Sims, Senator Robert Peters, as well as a host of other organizations that have been working on these issues as they relate to police reform, as they relate to survivors' rights and compensation for victims, and even as they relate to some sentencing reforms. We're going to go through every single piece of that legislation on tomorrow night. And so I would encourage you, as well as anyone else who wants some clarification, who wants us to break it down, who wants to talk about what those particular scenarios are, please bring them to us. I would hope that you guys would think that as the Legislative Black Caucus that we know the issues that are germane to our communities. We're not just sitting on top of a hill. I am from Inglewood. I live on 51st and Wood. Like, I hear gunshots every night. I just had my car stolen. I not able to go to a grocery store every day because I live in a food desert. We are going through the same things that our most vulnerable communities are going through. And there's no way that we want to put something on the books that's going to keep us from being safe and keeping us from protecting ourselves in our communities.
Also, with the cash bond that was strict from that in that legislation. I had one of my white brothers down in Cole County was talking to me about that part of the bill. And I had to explain to him what makes that piece of that legislation so important is because we got indigent Black people that went to Cook County Jail who sat there from anywhere from 2 to 7 years before their case went to court because they didn't have no money.
Yeah.
That's why that legislation was so important.
Developing tonight, a controversial criminal justice reform bill has passed both houses in Illinois, but law enforcement officials hope there's still a chance to turn things around. As our Jasmine Payut explains, that bill is now headed to the governor's desk.
This bill, having received a constitutional majority, is hereby declared passed.
With a fist in the air, cheers of joy echoed throughout the House chamber as both houses passed Bill 3653, a measure that will reform the Illinois justice system as we know it.
I think this is something that'll be good for not only the Black community, I think it'll be good for the whole community.
The bill, backed by the Illinois Legislative Black Caucus, would eliminate cash bail, require officers to wear body cameras, and end qualified immunity for law enforcement, making them personally liable in civil suits.
This bill forces them to be a little bit more cautious, concerned about results that happen when they make mistakes.
Stanley Franklin is president of the East St. Louis NAACP branch. He says the organization has been pushing for these changes, more so since the death of George Floyd.
I think the intention is to try to build a better bridge between the community and the police that serve them and the government that serves them. But I think there's a good chance this is going to have an opposite effect.
But on the other side, Edwardsville Police Chief Jay Keevan says the bill misses the mark. He, along with Republican politicians like Jason Plummer, believe the bill will make it harder for officers to do their jobs.
I don't know how making it so difficult for people to choose policing as a profession and to stay good police officers to stay in that profession makes our community safer. It doesn't.
With Governor Pritzker's signature being the final step in the process, the chief is hoping there's still a chance.
What we are saying is we don't want ill thought out change.
Reporting in Illinois, Jasmine Payut, 5 on your side.
And a lot of white folks don't understand that.
Thank you.
And wait a minute, and Sonya,
Wanda, we had young men there too.
Yes.
Sonya, let us tell you, LG was on 2 weeks ago, and he did go over the bill with us. But I like to say, for me, and I work in Springfield, this town hall meeting is not publicized enough.
Nobody knows about it.
Right.
I'm glad that you're telling us about it tonight. And if you send me the email, the press release regarding it, I will send it out so others will know about it. But we have a couple of journalists on the line that I know have some questions for you, Sonya. So if you wouldn't mind, I'd like to ask one of them, Mr. TJ Daniels, if he would go ahead and ask his question.
Thank you. Hi, Representative Harper. My question is, I know that you're on the Restorative Justice Committee, and I wonder, do you feel that the bill that the governor's just passed in regards to cash bond, a step forward for facilitating restorative justice, as it relates to those who have been so mistreated in the criminal justice system by being detained for so long, like they've said, 2 to 7 years, on possibly a count or that they didn't even commit. It's something that they didn't do, but have been in jail for so long that it seems like they've paid the punishment for their crime or for that crime plus another crime.
Yeah.
Do you feel that that bill is a step forward in facilitating restorative justice as you see it?
Yes, I do feel like that bill is a step forward in facilitating restorative justice. I think that we see a system in America, in this great system of mass incarceration, where, you know, those who don't have the money are the ones that go to jail, you know? When we think about our Black communities, it does seem that those who don't have the money to post bond, the money to get a lawyer right at that particular moment when they're charged, do face an undue burden of staying in jail and then also those lasting effects, right, that come from that.
Yeah.
I'd also like to say that, as a single mom from Inglewood, think about the impact that this has on the households of families, right? Think about the women or the people who are left behind when people go to jail, and how this not only takes away their earner in their household, but then also takes away their money in their household, and how that just has an effect on our community overall. That's something that I've gone through.
Wanda, I do have a question.
As my constituents. So yeah, that's exactly why we have decided to end cash bail in the state of Illinois. And no, it won't happen tomorrow. It's going to happen over a period of time. But we hope that'll be the first step that other states can take the example as well.
Okay, and Elizabeth Johnson has a question for you. Elizabeth, go ahead with your question. Elizabeth.
Okay, my question is, and it's probably, I don't know whether it's a question as opposed that it is a statement. I'd like to know why the employees of Pontiac Correctional Center are not required to wear face masks when they work, because the inmates that are getting infected, they're not getting infected because they're out in the street and they're coming back. They're getting infected from the employees that work there that refuse to wear masks.
And that the man's death is the first in our area linked to a jail or prison. Pablo Iglesias joins us live in the studio right now. And Pablo, you spoke to a woman concerned about her son who is an inmate there.
Amber, the Illinois Department of Corrections reports that 222 inmates have been infected in this outbreak. Now, when I spoke with Beverly Smith today, she said she's worried for her son's safety.
They're not cleaning the place or sanitizing the place like it should be.
In the last week, the Livingston County Health Department says 89 inmates at Pontiac Correctional Center have tested positive for COVID-19. Rising case counts are raising questions from Cook County resident Beverly Smith, whose son is an inmate there.
Well, he has said there were inmates that has the virus, and they had moved them, but before the quarantine was over, they had put them back on the regular cell block. And he also said that there were officers that had the virus as well.
Smith's son has said watered-down bleach is used for cleaning, and not all guards are wearing masks. She feels that the facility falls short of staying safe.
I don't think that they're doing everything that they can, because my son is always calling me. I have to call Springfield. I have to call the Board of Health, the governor's office. Pontiac pretty much set up their own rules, and they do whatever they want to do. So it was really nothing that they could do.
Livingston County's health department keeps track of the inmate cases, but the Illinois Department of Corrections handles the rest.
They facilitate all of the contact tracing for inmates, so they're not considered active cases, but they are included in our overall totals.
Ultimately, Smith hopes more will be done to help minimize chances of a bigger outbreak.
I would prefer the officers that are there to do what needs to be done to protect themselves and as well as the inmates.
The Illinois Department of Corrections says they recognize how difficult infection control can be in prisons and say they work closely with the state health department to ensure best practices. Reporting for 25 News, I'm Pablo Iglesias. Amber?
Yeah, so I can inquire about why people aren't wearing masks.
And I've called Pontiac, and when I talked to the lady,
new information to me.
And then they're putting infected inmates in with non-infected inmates. They have just gotten to the point of segregating the inmates that are coming down with COVID. But as you know, and I know, the only way you can get infected with COVID is to come in contact. And those inmates are stuck there. So the only place that they can come in contact with someone with COVID is through the employees.
Yes, ma'am, I do agree. And you definitely give me something to check up on. And what you're talking about is an exact reason why when COVID started, we made recommendations that, hey, release the people who need to be released. But also now making sure that they were added and pushed up on the list to get vaccinated as well. Now that you bring up these concerns that we still may have people in those facilities not wearing masks and spreading COVID, Thank you so much for that
You
information.
have an employee that has been infected 3 different times, and
Wow.
he has refused to put on a mask. And if you need names, times, and dates, I have a recording from when I called Pontiac to check on a loved one. And when the lady came back, she was appalled that I knew what was going on in her facility, and she did.
Oh wow! Please do. Can you please send
And
me
what
that
did you
information?
do
I'd be
about it?
happy to follow up on that.
Yeah, because the thing is, if you look at the hospitals, the doctors wearing a mask, the nurses wearing a mask, anybody working in a hospital have to have on a mask. So if you working in a prison institution, and the only way, as the lady Elizabeth just pointed out, that the inmates can get it is by the workers, then by God, they should have on a mask. And if they don't want to put on a mask, they should be suspended.
Before I can go to work, I have to go online. I have to tell whether or not I've been exposed to anybody with COVID. I mean, I have 15 questions that I have to answer every morning.
Absolutely.
In the hours of 4 a.m. and 7 a.m. before I can walk in the door. And when I get there, I have to have a mask on my face. They have to take my temperature, and we have no children in our building.
After months of doing his job from home and teaching health classes over Zoom, Chicago Public School nurse Dennis Kosuth is expected back inside this building for the first phase of the district's reopening plan. But unless there's an emergency...
I've been working outside, so I've got 4 pairs of pants on. I've got these Sirius boots. These are Canadian boots. I got 2 hats on. I've got 2 gaiters. I got my mask on. And this is how I stay warm.
Teachers at another school on the northwest side of the city did the same, despite being called inside last Monday, instead conducting their virtual learning outdoors to let the district know they don't approve of the reopening.
December was the deadliest month in this country from coronavirus. People may have been traveling during winter break. I don't know where people have been. And we're gonna have kids come into school 7 days after that and think that this is gonna be just great. I mean, I don't think it's safe to have students in buildings right now. I don't think it's safe for staff to be in buildings.
By Friday, Chicago Public Schools said about 65% of teachers and staff had reported back in person. The district says it's poured over $100 million into preparing school buildings for the return of over 77,000 pre-K through 8 and cluster group students who've opted for in-person learning. This includes a district-wide ventilation assessment, HEPA filters for each classroom in use, safety signage, and PPE bundles for the hundreds of schools reopening in the next month. But with COVID cases rising in Chicago and Illinois surpassing the 1 million case mark last week, teachers like Dennis say the risk of reopening is still not worth it. In a press conference Friday, the city's mayor, Lori Lightfoot, reaffirmed the decision to reopen.
I know you are anxious. I know many of you are scared. And I understand that. We are doing everything that we can to place safety in this pandemic at the front and center of what we are doing, and using the learning from other schools' experiences to our benefit, but importantly, to the benefit of our school community.
The city's positivity rate has remained around 10% in recent days. Bars and restaurants in the city are open for outdoor service only, but Chicago's parochial and some private schools have been offering in-person learning for months.
Many of these schools are in exactly the same neighborhoods as our CPS schools.
The CEO of Chicago Public Schools says reopening some schools now is a matter of equity, adding that teachers who don't show up to school this week for the students' return will be considered absent without leave.
When we look at student engagement with remote learning, we see huge gaps, in particular on the south and the west side of Chicago, which is predominantly African-American communities throughout the city.
Absolutely true, but who's actually signing up for in-person learning? It's the neighborhoods that are predominantly whiter, that tend to be more wealthy, that have opted to have their kids in schools.
The Chicago Teachers Union responded to the city's decision to push forward with the reopening in their own press conference.
The level of care that comes from the people who run this system, it really sucks. I'm trying not to be emotional, My 6-year-old nephew was the first person in my family to contract COVID. I've had 4 other family members since him, with 2 of them right now in ICU.
I mean, I appreciate doctors saying that kids need to be in school. My own kids need to be in school. I take the point. I would say to the doctors, they don't necessarily know what conditions are like in CPS buildings. There's a long history where we're told things will happen that don't happen.
One of the things music teacher Quentin Washington wants to see at his school is mandatory testing.
We need to have like professional sports type of testing where we're being tested regularly, and CPS's current policy is voluntary for staff, but that's not adequate.
Quentin is also worried that splitting classrooms in person and virtual will be even more detrimental than a fully remote system, especially for diverse learners.
That's unfair to the people that are on remote learning.
We heard from parents who had similar concerns and chose to keep their students at home, and others who were looking forward to their kids' return.
Wow, thank you so much for that.
As you said, send her, Sonya, can you give everybody your email address where she should send, where inquiries should be sent?
Yeah, can you put it in the chat room?
Yep, I'm putting the chat for you guys.
Okay. Also, I want to move us a little bit further to some legislation. Do you know about House Bill 7, Representative Rita Mayfield's bill?
Well, no, please refresh my memory. We got so many bills.
Well, that bill deals with the consolidation of. Did we lose her?
No. She's still there.
She'll come back.
Let's see. Hold on. We did lose her. She's coming back.
She'll come back.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
All right. House Bill 7 deals with the consolidation of the school districts. And in her legislation, it only deals with 25%. And I'm sure that's just a starting point, because I served on the governor's task force with Representative Mary Flowers, and this is the report that our committee put together. Go ahead.
Let me ask this question.
Go ahead.
Is the language specific to an area, or is it saying statewide?
Statewide. It's supposed to be statewide.
And they're consolidating schools or school districts?
School districts. And see, that was the issue that we had with our report that came out of the governor's task force on property tax relief. And part of the problem is that we have 856 school districts in this state, and we spend $18 billion in property taxes on all those school districts. And the bulk of that money is going to who? Superintendents. And when we was at Representative Mary Flowers' office working on this, on her committee, we looked at the city of Chicago, District 299. You have 400,000 students, 600 schools, and a president or CEO, whatever you want to call it, she now makes $300,000. You take the same school district out in Ford Heights. George Jackson, who came from Proviso, got the job out there. He got 2 schools, less than 1,000 students, and make damn near $400,000. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. And when you look at New Trier, they got about 7 school districts in that area up there, and they got about 7 separate superintendents. So they're spending millions of dollars on having 7 different superintendents. And that's why within our report that we recommended that we should consolidate these school districts down to 6 and using the same model as Chicago, because if Janet Jackson can be over 400,000 students, 600 schools, why do we need 456 school districts.
Whoa.
Now, understand the report that came out from the Democrats on that task force. Now, they came up with the benchmark that we're spending $30 billion a year in property taxes. We got 7,000 units of government. And so if you deduct the 856 school districts from that, that leaves you 6,144 units of government. And if you take away the $18 billion, that leaves $12 billion left to support that 6,144 units of government. And our recommendation is to cut that down to 6. Our recommendation was to cut the 102 counties down to 50. Well, we had 80, but then there was some articles written in the Chicago Tribune where people said, wait a minute, if other states can have less than that, why do we need 102 counties? So then we said, let's cut it down to 50. Now, the biggest issue that came out of the Democrat report, I don't know if that report hit the governor's desk, but they told us the reason they can't get nothing done when it comes to property tax reform is that they got public officials who got friends, families on the payroll, they got contracts, and they got people that's involved with vendoring businesses. And so we're saying, wait a minute, you telling us, and our people are losing their properties in this county like crazy over these taxes.
Systemic.
Yes. And so we're gonna let Representative
Harper.
No, not Harper. Representative from up north. Oh my God.
Up north?
Yeah, he was the co-chair of the committee of the task force.
What did he? Okay, so
he was the one who was the Democrat that put out that committee report that told us why they can't fix nothing. So my question would be,
things are going to change a great deal. Mike Madigan has stepped down. So
you mean the gorilla is gone?
No.
Yeah, he's gone.
He's been gone for a couple of days.
Well, you
So
see,
I think we've gotten through our introductions.
not so much that we want to regress,
folks
but
know me. I'm Dr. Allison
he
Arwady,
appointed
Commissioner
a
of the
young
Chicago
person
Department
to
of
his
Public
seat.
Health. I actually am
That
also
person
trained as
has
both
some
an
problems
internist
in
and a
his
pediatrician,
background,
so
and
take
so
care of both
he told the
adults
dude to step
and kids,
down.
and
So now
obviously
he
have been
stepped down,
really involved
and
in
now he's
answering a
appointing
lot
a
of questions
female
and
to
looking at a
that
lot of this
position.
science,
So
working closely with CPS really
news
throughout
people
this
asked the governor,
pandemic.
what did he think
So
about
maybe just
that
to kick
whole
us off, I've got a list of some
So the
questions that
governor
have come
said,
in,
well,
and we're really going to
there
have a
is
conversation among
history
all of us.
of how
But
that gets
maybe I'll
settled.
start with you, Dr.
Maybe
Fox,
I
just
may
sort of an
have to go
obvious
back to
question, which is
analyze
CPS
that
is
situation.
recommending that teachers and
But the
staff and
bottom line
students
is,
go back in person, but we're having
things
this
are
conversation virtually.
Things are
So
changing.
why
have
aren't
hit
we
the
meeting
nail
in
on the
person
head.
too?
And I have been saying on my
we are
show,
delighted to have this
now
conversation.
that the gorilla
But
got
we
his
do it,
foot off
it's
y'all
easy,
necks
it's
down there in
efficient,
Springfield, and believe me,
and it's
Madigan
convenient.
has
You know,
stopped
I'm working
progress,
really harder
especially
than
property
probably any
tax
other job
reform
I've
for
ever
damn near
had,
40
but
years.
I'm in my slippers
And
at home
who
on a
got
winter
hurt?
morning.
Our
Okay,
community.
we do
Still
it this way
suffering.
because we can do it
And
this
when
way
the tax
successfully.
divide came out,
My internet works
where
well.
Dr. Berry
I've got a
from the
laptop that's
University of
good most
Chicago
of the
under
time.
Joe Barrios,
And more than that, I
that
have had the
report told us
benefit
they
of
stole
in-person education
$2.5
my
billion
whole
in
life.
my community.
I'm not struggling
And
to
my
learn
question to
to
the
read
Black
or to do
Caucus,
science or math.
what are you guys going to do about that?
But that's not the case for
What
everybody
are you guys going to do about the $2.5
right
billion
now. And it is
that was
incredibly
stolen from the
important
Black community?
that kids,
Let her
all
answer,
kids,
let her
have the
answer.
freedom
What
and the
say you, State
opportunity to learn in person, just
You
like
said
all
what
other
what's
kids
happening with
in
the
the city
2.5 billion that was stolen from the
in private and
community?
parochial schools
Through which
and
which
across the
part
nation
now?
and really across
That
the
was
world.
Joe Barrios when
Students
he
are
was
back
the county
in person,
assessor
and
for Cook
we
County.
want our students back
Oh,
here
yeah.
too.
Yeah, I don't know if you ever had the opportunity, Representative Harper. You can go to YouTube and watch the chronological order of the tax divide by Jason Gratos and the Chicago Tribune. You ought to take time. The Black Caucus, you guys ought to take time and go look at that. I mean, it was one historical study that them white folks did on how black people got ripped off.
I'm Jason Grotto. I'm a reporter with ProPublica Illinois, and this is...
I'm Sandhya Kamampati. I'm a data reporter at ProPublica Illinois.
The tax divide was a story that I actually started at the Chicago Tribune about 2 years ago. For some quick context, I had spent the previous 4 or 5 years covering municipal debt issues with the city and the state, as well as the pension issues with the city and the state, and just realized there's a ton of legacy liabilities that we're all going to have to face and our children will have to face. And despite all the numerous taxes that we now have ladled on to everything, the way they're going to actually do this is with the property tax. It is the largest revenue source for local government. And so I decided to look at the other side of the balance sheet, which would be property taxes. And that's kind of how the thing got started. So just a quick summary of what we're going to kind of talk about. There's been a long history of misinformation and a lack of transparency, as well as flawed assessments at the Cook County Assessor's Office. This went long before Joe Barrios came to office, although it got much worse under him. Changes at the county assessment level, coupled with the housing market collapse, exposed many of the problems. I describe it almost like when the tide goes out and there's a long pier and you see all the barnacles hanging on the pier. That's basically what I believe the housing market crash and the change to the ordinance did to the Cook County's assessment system. The biggest thing that we found is that Cook County assessments are highly regressive, that the appeals system does not fix this problem, even though the county pushes heavily, encourages taxpayers to appeal, and most probably should. The fact of the matter is not everyone does. Most people get reductions. As a result, it actually makes the regressivity worse. All of this also holds true for commercial, except for the appeals. The appeals process on commercial, because most commercial property owners do appeal, it gets slightly better, but in terms of industry standards, it still does not meet any of them. One of the other major things that we'll discuss is we did a thorough look at Assessor Barrios's valuations of commercial and industrial property, and found that values, the exact same values repeated over multiple reassessment periods, which are over 3 years apart. This is virtually impossible if they were actually doing the valuations. And then the undervaluing of large commercial properties, such as this building most likely, the Willis Tower, I like to call it the Sears Tower still. And this creates shifts in the tax burden that are very difficult to figure out. That would be one thing that would be very interesting to figure out, is if they actually valued commercial and industrial property downtown and other places, how would that affect the tax rate, the multiplier, and a bunch of other things that go into doing property taxes. So this is kind of a historical look of what, sort of what's been going on over time, going back to '94. I'm going to try to move through this really quickly because I tend to yammer on sometimes. So the assessment level during this period, this is the median assessment levels for various classifications of property. So Cook County is the only county in Illinois' 101 counties to use something called classification. And basically what this means is they assess property at different levels depending on the use of the property. So an assessment level is basically like, what part of the value of your property are they going to actually tax, right? It's like kind of like you earn an income, but the federal government doesn't tax you on it, your entire income. They tax you on a portion of it. That's what the assessment level is. So during this period, the assessment level for residential properties should have been 16%, but you'll see that it was pretty steady at 10%, and I'll explain how they were able to do that. The problem with that is there's a law in the Constitution that says if you do classification, one class cannot be 2.5 times greater than another class. And you'll see here that industrial should have actually been, I believe, 36. Commercial should have been 38. I might have got that wrong. Maybe commercial is 36. But you can see this is 2.5 times greater. That exposed the county to a massive lawsuit that is still going on. It's been going on for about 10 years. The result is somewhere around 97 when this sort of kind of came out, and then certainly when the cases started getting filed in the early 2000s. Suddenly you see a reduction in commercial and industrial properties. We still don't know how this happened. We've sued the county Our case is actually at the appellate court. We won at the circuit court. We're trying to figure out what happened here. But somehow the median assessment levels dropped. So one way they did this with the residential properties is they actually, instead of just assessing everyone at 10%, because that's not what the county ordinance required, what they would do is they messed with their estimated market values. So the way that residential properties, the way you come up with the market values is you use something called the hedonic regression model. Very standard. Many people in business use it, in real estate. And you just basically take a bunch of variables, you take a bunch of sales, you put them in there, you run a bunch of regressions, and you come up with values for the variables. And then you arrive at a market value, right? And they were doing something that they called the adjustment factor, where at the end of the market value, they calculated it, they multiplied it by a percentage. So in this case, about 0.6%. That had the effect of dropping the market value by 40%. And so when you did all the calculations, the assessment came out to 10%. So for example, you had a house that's $326,000. You apply the adjustment factor, it actually comes out to $200,000. If you were to take 16% of this number, you get $32,000, which is 10% of this. So it was a very interesting maneuver. Okay. So the key way that you look at these kinds of things is something called the sales ratio study. Despite what the assessor's office says, it's actually pretty straightforward. You divide the assessor's estimated value by a sale price, and you come up with a ratio. If the ratio is 1, it means they estimated the value perfectly. If it's over 1, they overvalued. If it's under 1, it's undervalued. So you get then a distribution of what those ratios are. And so this was from 2003, okay, early on. This dotted line here is if they would have got it right. And you can see the median ratio is much lower than what it should have been. The good thing here, and this is where, in fact, something called uniformity, which is the tightness of the distribution. The county was actually doing a pretty decent job on that for many years. So that's a tight distribution. That's for residential. For commercial, not such a good idea. Not such a good way. They got a fat tail distribution. This is an early slide. There's a couple anomalies in the data there. But essentially, it's the same. Here's the median value. They've been undervaluing commercial property in the county for many, many, many years. This is just a quick tick-tock. I'll go through this really quickly. In 2004, Assessor Houlihan, some of these cases started popping up in 2003. Assessor Houlihan comes out. That's the assessor before Barrios. Publishes for the first time assessments online. Puts the formula out there. There's a big push for records. We also found in the court cases that the assessor started asking staff to examine ways to completely overhaul the system because they realized they had a pretty big problem. 4 years later, Houlihan announces a new honest assessment levels. So what did he do? He set the assessment level for residential at 10%, which is what they were doing anyway, and moved commercial to 25%, just 2.5% difference. Of course, they never told everyone they were assessing everyone at 10% anyway, but this was what they did. 2008, September, one-day county board hearing. The thing passes, never studied, no one ever looked at it. October, the new ordinance goes into effect as of January 1, and of course we all know what happened between September 2008 and January 1, 2009. The housing market pretty much collapsed. So this is a simple scatter plot, right? It's kind of the same thing I looked at before, but each dot is a sale. This is now the 1, so they get it right. This is the net consideration is basically the sale price after personal property is taken out. So as you can see, this is a pretty good tight distribution. There's a slight regressivity. That's a regression line there. And so this is 2006, right? Before the housing market crashed, before the change in the assessments ratios. This is 2009. And so basically, two things happened. They removed the adjustment factor. So now when they were undervaluing by 40% all those properties, now they're not doing that anymore. And then also you had the housing market crash, and the hedonic regression models that they used relied on sales from the previous 3 to 5 years, depending on what year we're talking about. So that together created this massively unfair system. We believe hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars in property taxes were shift from the wealthiest homeowners to the poorest homeowners. And there's still work being done on the actual monetary effect on people. This is a more elegant way that Professor Chris Berry from U of C, we did a class together to look at this. It's just a more elegant way of looking at the regressivity. This is a bin scatter. It just kind of organizes things a little bit better. This now will go quickly. This is the effect on the effective tax rate. So the effective tax rate is basically the best way to kind of look at this. It's just your tax bill, how much you paid in taxes divided by the value of your home. So we look at sales, and again, you can see as sale price goes up, effective tax rate goes down. Now, when we went to the assessor's office, I skipped one part. In July 2015, the assessor's office put out a press release that said they had adopted a new state-of-the-art model to alleviate this problem that they knew that they had. It actually started under Houlihan with a grant from the MacArthur Foundation. Professor Chris Berry from U of C, along with some statisticians from a company called RW Ventures, worked on this. When we first started doing our reporting and I did my first cut of the ratio study, I kind of went to them and said, I'm not sure that they used your model. And they said, oh, hogwash, they used our model. Turned out they didn't use the model. So they weren't too pleased about that. Part of the result was I ended up teaching a class with Professor Berry, or helping him teach a class at U of C. And we looked at appeals, because when we brought all this to the assessor said, well, we have this appeal system, and it fixes any problems that we have, and anyone can appeal. What we found, actually, Rob wrote the paper over there. What we found is that the appeal system actually made the regressivity worse, not better. And here's why. Owners of high-priced homes are far more likely to appeal, partly because all the attorneys that are involved in this business, they put out flyers in wealthy neighborhoods, but not in the poor neighborhoods. Homeowners from minority areas, which are also more likely to, less likely to appeal, actually appeal. The probability of them appealing is way lower. And neighborhood, even though they're more likely to be overvalued, I got ahead of myself. And then the other thing is we found is that there's a highly concentrated area of people who appeal. So 85% we found of the appeals actually come from the north side. If you're looking at the city of Chicago.
Thank you so much. Well, it's no secret that our communities have been done on just about every level in every industry.
Yes.
And I think what we need right now is especially with having a new speaker, with having even a new Senate president and a new Black Caucus chair and new all around. What are we going to do with that now, right? So we can complain about the progress that we haven't been able to make up until 2021 because of all of the stalemates and people in office, but we will not have an excuse going for the next 10 years.
Oh,
amen. How do we mobilize ourselves from a community level up to the state level, up to the federal level to get what we need for our communities right now? Time out now about talking about what Madigan did, what Daley did, what this person did. Now it's going to be about what did you do?
Come on now. I like that.
Well, I mean, I like what you're saying, Rep, but the point you have to understand, we have to understand how we got to this point.
Oh, exactly.
I don't think most of you guys in Springfield, have you had the opportunity to study the minutes of what happened at the convention in 1970 that put us in a lot of this hot water? Have you guys even looked at those minutes?
No.
Oh, baby, I'm telling you, look, I'm so busy every day. No, I don't have time to look at those minutes. But come on to my task force, join my committee, be my personal advisor to help me know what I need to do in order to do
that's why they call me the tax doctor. I would do everything I can to help you.
Hello, baby.
Okay. I would do everything I can to help you.
Well,
if we can help you, help our community,
right,
then my job will not have been in vain.
There you go. There you go.
Do it.
Sonya, can you please pass out the information about the town hall meeting? As I said, I live in Springfield. I haven't even heard about it. So
sure, yes.
Is it possible
our town hall is happening tomorrow evening at 6 p.m. I just sent the email to Wanda. I don't know.
Okay.
Tomorrow evening at 6 p.m. And it's virtual. I just sent it to Wanda.
Okay.
So help us share it share it in your network, share it personally, because what you're talking about, can you come on tomorrow night and say that? I will save a spot for you in a program just to say that, please. Because that's what we need to be moving towards right now.
Oh, State Rep, thank you.
Anthony?
Thank you. Yes, yes. Now, Jillian. I see Jillian is on. Jillian has a very unique perspective about most things. And I would just like for her to ask her question to you, State Rep. Jillian, ask your question.
Not so much of a question. Hello, State Rep. How are you? I heard about the restorative justice, and that's something like I have a true like passion with, because growing up we worked with my mom had us working with Northwestern and doing some restorative justice and sitting on their panels and in for their meetings. And I just don't see it for the juveniles as much as it was there then. So I'm approaching 36, and this is when I was preteen, early teen years. I don't see that for the juveniles now. I don't see where they're getting second chance or even having mentors to guide them through. But just because you make one mistake doesn't mean, your life is shot. You can't move on and move forward and, succeed in life. So what is the plan for maybe some more juvenile restorative justice programs? Sure, thank you for that. And you're absolutely right. We have issues in our community where we just don't have enough resources, economic, recreational, as well as educational, for our youth and even for our adults. And we're seeing the effects of that in our communities over the generations. What can we do to increase that? Well, I know what we've seen in the past is that when the wrong people are in charge, and when we don't get spoken for in the state budget, like the process that we're going through right now, all those organizations that currently do that type of work get cut out. And I don't know if you guys knew, but when Rauner took over, that's when we saw our violence increase even more in our communities, because all of those restorative justice programs for our youth were cut out. And guess what? They still have not been restored to this very day. And so here's an issue that we continue to fight for as a Black Caucus, to get more money to come to our communities for those programs. But here's the issue that we need to talk about. Our communities, our organizations and our communities are, one, getting passed over for these grants, right? For organizations that are in other communities but say that they're helping our communities. And two, a lot of times our organizations are not even availing themselves. So our organizations that reach out to the youth, that do job training for youth, that do organizing for youth, are not applying for these grants that we need them to apply to. And so that's a twofold problem, right? There's an issue that we have currently, even with ICEJA, where we're seeing that violence prevention funding isn't going to the communities that it need to, but it's going to downtown Chicago and city of this and city of that, but not to the organizations doing the real work.
Yeah,
right. It's not enough that we go to Springfield and pass a bill to make the money come down. The people in our communities have to be ready and willing and able to accept that money when it comes as well. And we have to be following up on the implementation, as well as increasing those resources. So I was just saying that to say some of the challenges around that. That is actually the area which I come from. I come from running youth programs in the Inglewood community. I come from organizing my youth, going out on the street and bringing them in, and then taking them back out after I train them to go and get some other kids and bring them back in. And guess what? I had to run that work. I had to run my own youth program off my own food stamps, out my own refrigerator, and off my own part-time salary. And that is not conducive for our communities. We really do need to build the capacities of our organizations that serve our youth, but we need some real investment from them. And we also need for our state agencies to award the exact right people. So that's an issue that we stay on top of, but that we could definitely still use the voice of our communities behind. Our 3 grants for the cannabis money is a perfect example of the money that should be specifically coming back to our community, to those communities hurt by the war on drugs. But when you look at the majority of the people who have been awarded from our 3 grants, you will find that their addresses are not inside of our communities hurt by the war
Never.
on drugs. So that's when we need to go back and get in the governor's face and these agencies' faces and say, hey, my state rep, my state senator fought for this money and it's not coming to where it's supposed to go. But we also need to get into the face of our nonprofit organizations who may not have their paperwork in order or who think that they're too good, high and mighty to accept state funding because this is our funding to take.
The governor today saying his administration is awarding $46 million in small business grants under a program called the Business Interruption Grant, or BIG. The grants, he says, are the first round of payments to businesses closed because of the pandemic and those that experienced property damage from the looting that took place in late May and early June. There is a variety of the kinds of businesses affected, but a big portion of which will go, Governor Pritzker says, to those that are child care related. 2,655 businesses, $46 million averages out to $17,325.80 each.
Today, I'm building on our work to preserve jobs and save small businesses. I'm proud to announce the first $46 million of our business interruption grant program that has been deployed now to help more than 2,600 small businesses in over 400 cities and towns across Illinois. That's 78 of our 102 counties. The initial focus of these grants has been on businesses that have been most severely impacted by COVID-19, those that were completely shut down in the spring, and those that are in COVID-impacted areas that experienced property damage amidst the looting and civil unrest in June.
So the governor says a second check, perhaps a third, could be coming down the line. And it's not certain at this point if businesses looted several days ago will qualify. All of the businesses getting this money, we'll list them at WGNTV.com and how you can find out more about this program and if your business would qualify.
See,
hey. But Representative Harper, how did we drop the ball? Because you, Hollywood Ricky Hendon,
they weren't
Rebus
there
Fellow, all of us was at the table with you when we started writing that legislation. The cannabis bill. I mean, we all came down there in busloads with our green shirts on. Hard and hardy down there. How did we get to what do you call it? The 3-car Molly played on us.
It's called, you can pass the law, but my job is to pass the law. My job is not to implement it. Okay?
Oh,
I can have all my good intentions in my law. I can go out and get my community members to say this is what we want in a law, and we can write it, and we can be happy with what we wrote. But then somebody picks up that law, like, you know, them agencies with Susan from Springfield who've been working there for 50 years and don't care about my community in Chicago.
Yeah.
And she's gonna do the same thing with that grant that she's been doing with it. And so what we need to get to is we need to get to this implementation part. Yes. Because how about this? I'm gonna need for people in my community to care a whole lot more about us than cannabis. Okay, because this ain't the only bill that ain't being implemented right. My food desert bill hasn't been implemented right. My urban agriculture bill hasn't been implemented right. My grants for people coming home from prison hasn't been implemented right. But the only bill people in my community care about is the cannabis bill not getting implemented right. Let's get ourselves together. Let's care about all of our bills being implemented right. Let's care about equity in every industry, not just the cannabis industry. Where's our equity in the casino industry? Where's our equity in the healthcare industry? Where's our equity in the law enforcement industry? We should have social equity in every industry and not just cannabis. And I want everybody to get happy about stopping gun violence as happy as they are about cannabis.
Come on now, we have.
That's why we call follow the money from A to Z. Hey. Anything that got money involved in it, black folks should have their hands. If we make up 13% of the population, we should get 13% of all contracts. If we're 95% of the majority in any given municipality, then we should get about 95% of the contracts. And we're not doing none of this stuff.
We have Miss Lavette Haynes on the line. Lavette, you have a question for the state rep?
Good evening, state rep and everyone. I just wondered, you know, when we when we have a historical perspective of hearing the same thing, it seems as though this is the same conversation that we pass bills and we get them in front of the governor's for the governor's pen signing, and then when it does trickle down, it doesn't reach the communities. There are over 200 nonprofit organizations in East Garfield Park, and when these organizations are given these grants, statistics still show that the results are still at the bottom. So if they're not successes, because we can still every day, the Black community is at the bottom of the totem pole in mental health funding and art and culture money. And so hearing that you do what you do, and then who's to follow up on to make that a reality? Because even in the procurement, if we are not sending professionals out to have this conversation, there should be some kind of executive order being demanded by Pritzker to release this funding, because I'm seeing more and more that these people are getting funding from federal governments and from private industries based upon the death of George Floyd and all of the other Black young people that's died. So they start their Black fund, and then they're funded, and then make us jump through hoops to get it. So something has to be a louder voice to make this not happen, and for us to not have another 20 years saying how we've got to manipulate the system so that funding comes to us. So how do we become unified in one voice to make these demands? And you know, listen, I've been doing this for going over 20 years, and it's like the same song.
You're right.
So, and you know, because what we're doing in Garfield Park, we're doing the Restoration Garfield Park. It's 180 acres that needs to be repaired.
Nothing to do with the state. This is something that we do. And in the meantime, in between time, if the state has something to offer, we would work with it. I mean, we pick one child that's coming out of a state institution, and we teach them common things like filling out a job form, going to the grocery store, making a budget, you know, just everyday ordinary things that we take for granted, but these young people have never done. So if you have an agency that needs volunteers or needs somebody to help them, my church will help you. The people in my church will help you for free.
All right.
Because we need our children to be informed that when they come out, there's simple things that we take for granted they don't know how to do, and it's not their fault.
Right.
Thank you. And that's exactly what we need a whole lot more of. We need a whole lot more of people just taking it upon themselves that this is my personal responsibility to my community, to my kid, to my extended family, to them kids down the street, to them little boys hanging out at the gas station. And you know, it takes everybody feeling like they have some personal responsibility to do that, so that it doesn't fall on one organization who has to go, you know, figure out all the grants in the world to do it. And I think that that's what our work is together, right? Yeah. Our work is not just figuring out, hey, you know, keeping the governor in line, keeping the alderman in line, and keeping the state reps in line, and making sure that they're doing what they're doing policy level. But what are those things that we also can be doing on a community level, and on a home level, on a faith base, on a church level, to also repair these? Because when I think about what these kids need, because you know, I communicate with them on a daily basis, it don't take no $100,000 grant at the end of the day. What they need is a face to smile at them, to love them, to wrap their arms around them, and to lead them to a better life.
Can I interject, please?
Absolutely.
White communities are not saying that. They're not saying we don't need $100,000. They're saying we need millions of dollars.
But
I'm
saying in addition to that.
I know, no. Listen. When we're dealing with a systemic, demonic kind of situation, we are dealing with young 13 and 14-year-olds shooting people and robbing them and stealing their cars. DART let out, I don't know how many young people. That's not to say they don't need to get out, but you release these kids who are dependent on drugs, alcohol, and prescription pills, and then you turn them back into the community with no resources. And then you're turning them to parents that can't handle them. And then people say, well, the parents' responsibility is to take care of these kids. No, this is a systemic situation that has to do with pipelines to prison, and it's a lot deeper. And if we don't have a unified voice and start demanding that Pritzker or whomever else is in the government to do executive orders like the ex-president did for his people. He did executive orders and gave billions of dollars to the farmers, while now we're receiving all of those farm products in boxes. So there's got to be a systematic change to this, where we are angry enough to say enough is enough.
I agree with you 100%. This is what I know, and this is what I know. I was a truant officer for 13 years with the Board of Education. I went to houses every day for 7.5 hours a day. I can come back and tell you whose children were being neglected, whose children needed food and clothing, and that they needed extra help, and that the girl was having a baby, so she needed extra help. They got rid of truant officers. They got rid of the people
they
in
did.
those houses every day to tell you what's going on with these children in these classrooms and why they act that way. They got rid of us because Daley wanted to take control of the Board of Education. And he he put all his cronies in.
Yep.
And he knocked all of us out. You don't know how many children that go to school every day that are homeless and they come there every day just to eat.
Yes, ma'am.
You don't know how many children come to our classroom, and I have bought clothes for them because they come to school without coats and the proper shoes and the proper shirts. You don't know.
Elizabeth, we got it, Elizabeth. We know. I hear the pain. And I'm sure
it's time for a change. It's time for a change, baby.
Yes.
It's time for a change. That's where we are now. At this time, as everybody should know, the Bible is coming to show us it is time for a change. And it's up to us to begin to work together. I love your church, Elizabeth. Whatever church that is, that church needs to be modeled throughout the state, because it takes us all. Not just one person, but we all have to get in here and dig into to save ourselves. We can't wait for somebody else to save us.
And you know, when you think about what Levette said, folks, the Urban League spend millions of dollars on telling us every damn year what's wrong with us. Why can't you take some of that money and fix some of what's wrong with us?
All right.
We don't need another study.
Thank you so much. Can I just add that Anthony?
I had just one thing I wanted to say. Just one thing.
I was just saying, when they just did the reparations, that instead of just saying the amount that we need, here we go with another study. We've been in this for 400 years being studied, and it's now time to repair. And the only way that you could repair is that we've got to march on Pritzker's hand and say, you've got to do executive orders. So we got to figure out how to put those executive orders where those dollars are coming direct.
Well, LaShawn Ford got an executive order.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're at the close of the show. Let's let oh my goodness. Let's let Madeline, you have the last.
Please, I was just going to say this. In terms of, how you doing, Sonya?
Hello.
It's been a while since we last talked.
Hey, I know it's been a minute. It's so good to see you.
Yeah. Listen, what I was going to say was, I used to work for the city of Chicago. I know that in terms of getting money from any level of government, is every level of government has there are a couple of ways to get money. One of them, of course, is grants, and there's always an announcement that's coming out, whatever the grant is, telling folks this money is going to be available for you to apply for at such and such a time. I worked for an agency, employment and training, for several years, and we managed community development block grant money. That money came out when the announcement was coming out about it. It was incumbent upon agencies that wanted to get some of that grant money to make themselves available to come and get the proposal guidelines and file their applications. I can tell you, when we reviewed a lot of those applications, I saw a lot of sloppy applications submitted. Some of them were good, but there's a process to all of this. It's not magic science. It's not. And so, when I hear some of these conversations, I'm wondering, what are we thinking about? All the money, it starts at the federal level, it gets filtered down to the state level. Some of it comes to the local level, and some of it is coming through the county. But, we're talking about tiers of money, the way it comes down, and it's incumbent upon us. If it's grant money, you got to apply for the money, but you also got to know when the proposals are coming out so that you're ready to apply for the money.
Sonya, we're going to have you back. We're going to have you back because we got everybody wants to bring everything to your attention. That means you are doing a great job because we want information from you.
Man, all of y'all are on point. Everything that y'all saying is stuff that we done said a million times.
Yes.
But the problem is we're saying it by ourselves. We need to share with our advocates, with our constituents, with our
people. Yes.
Because when we go to the governor, let me tell you how people think of us. They think, oh, they just politicians. They just saying whatever sound good because they want to get back in office the next year. It's a shame, but it's very disrespectful. They don't believe what we say unless y'all right there standing with us saying it. So that's
we gotta stand with y'all. That's it.
What day and what time do we need to be staying?
I'm gonna let you know when and where and what time to stand this year, and it's gonna be even easier because we virtual now. But I don't mean to be rude, but I gotta jump off y'all because I'm heading to another meeting.
We are too. Thank you so much.
Sonya, I left my information for you, and I do have your email. So whatever you need me to do, I'm at your disposal.
Thank y'all.
Thank you.
We love you, Sonya. Take care.
Everybody have a great one. We out of here.
All right.
Okay.
Great show. Great show.
Thank you. Bye-bye.